The thing that saved Cottonwood Bend was not a rifle, not a rope, not one of the loud men who thought the ranch belonged to them because they could sit a horse in bad weather. It was a cracked blue crock wrapped in a widow's shawl. And when Nora Bell stepped down from the freight wagon with that crock held tighter than her carpetbag, every man in the yard decided she was already a disappointment. She was 33 years old, though the road had carved older lines into her face. Her dark hair was pinned hard beneath a sun-faded bonnet. Her black traveling dress had been turned at the cuffs and mended at the hem. Beside her stood a little girl with a slate-gray coat buttoned wrong because she had done it herself on the last cold miles from the rail stop. The girl's name was Lottie. She was 6, and she watched the ranch yard with the stillness of a child who had learned that strangers showed what they were before they said it. Silas Ward stood in the ranch house doorway with his hat in both hands and said nothing. That told Nora more than words would have, and he had expected another kind of woman, younger maybe, softer, someone whose face still had room for foolish hope. What he had gotten was a plain widow with a child, a carpetbag, and a sourdough crock tied in blue cloth. Judd Raines, the foreman, leaned against the corral gate and looked her over from boots to bonnet. Then he said, loud enough for the yard to enjoy it, "Boss, I thought the paper said a wife. This one looks more like she came to collect washing." 2 hands laughed. One stopped when old Amos Pike turned his head. But Judd kept grinning, because men like Judd mistook cruelty for courage whenever a woman had no one standing beside her. Nora set the crock down in the dust carefully. Not her bag, the crock. Then she looked past the foreman to Silas Ward. "I am Nora Bell," she said. "Your letter said you needed a woman who could keep house and cook for the outfit." Silas glanced once at Lottie, just once. But it was enough. The child had been in Nora's letter, plain as daylight. 6 years old, quiet, no trouble, not to be left behind. Now Nora saw the truth settle on the man's face. He had read the part about the cooking. He had not let the child become real. Cottonwood Bend was 27 miles from the nearest town, and 100 from any place that had ever been kind to Nora Bell. The ranch sat low in the Colorado Territory, where the creek cut a crooked green seam through brown grass and wind. The house was 3 rooms of rough pine with a dog trot in the middle and a kitchen that had gone stale from neglect. Silas's first wife, Miriam, had died the winter before. The old cook, Haskell, had followed her into the ground 3 weeks back, and the fall shipping work was already moving toward the ranch like weather. Silas showed Nora the kitchen without apology. That might have been the only honest mercy he gave her that day. The stovepipe smoked at the seams. Grease lay on the table in a dull skin. A sack of flour had been left open long enough for mice to find it. On a shelf above the dry sink sat a china cup with a hairline crack and a narrow brass thimble. Miriam's things. Untouched, Nora saw them. She did not reach for them. She had learned that the dead were not to be shoved aside just because the living needed room. Silas stood near the door and turned his hat once in his hands. "I'll be plain with you, Mrs. Bell," he said. "I wrote for a woman who could run this house and feed my men. I did not rightly think through the child. The freight wagon goes back to Mesa Crossing on Monday. You can take until then to decide whether you want to be on it." Lottie had found the old cow dog by the stove. The dog had one torn ear, a clouded eye, and the exhausted dignity of an animal that had survived too many boots. She held out her hand flat as Nora had taught her. The dog sniffed, then lowered its head again without growling. Nora looked at the dirty stove, the dead woman's thimble, the man who was already measuring her for failure, and the blue crock still sitting in the yard. "I will cook supper," she said. "After that, you may decide whatever kind of man you mean to be." Silas looked at her. Something flickered in his face. It was not warmth, not yet. But it was the first sign that a sentence had found its way through the wall he kept around himself. Nora took off her bonnet, rolled up her sleeves, and went to work. She cleaned the stove first, not because it was easiest, but because a cold stove tells the whole truth about a house. She scraped the ash pan. She checked the flue. She sent Lottie outside to bring in the blue crock from the dust. She found lye soap, a broom with half its straw gone, a tub, and 3 onions softening in a basket under the table. By dusk the kitchen smelled of smoke, soap, coffee, and hot bread. She had turned a heel of salt pork into gravy, stretched old potatoes with onion, and baked sourdough biscuits from the starter she had carried across half the country like a living promise. She set the plates down without asking the men whether they approved. The near hands came in after sunset. 6 of them, then Judd, then Amos Pike, old as fence wire and twice as hard to bend. They ate the way ranchmen eat, when they do not want to compliment a woman too early. Fast, quiet, with suspicion. Judd took 2 biscuits before he admitted the first had been good enough to miss. Amos broke his open and studied the steam rising from the center. "Where'd you learn bread like this?" he asked. "Where bread mattered," Nora said. Amos watched her for another second, then nodded, as if that answer was larger than it sounded. Judd pushed back in his chair. "Bread in a house is one thing," he said. "Chuck feed in a blow is another. Haskell could set coffee and hot meat for 20 riders under a wagon sheet with sleet coming sideways. That kind of work will grind a woman down to splinters." Nora poured coffee into his empty cup. She did not spill a drop. "Then it is fortunate," she said, "that I have already been ground once." The room went still. Judd smiled as though he had won something, but he had not. He had simply found the edge of a woman who had not come all that way to be frightened by noise. Before Nora came to Cottonwood Bend, she had lived 3 winters in places that never made it onto maps. Tie camps, survey camps, freight camps, raw little gatherings of men in mud and temporary stoves, where trees were cut, rails were graded, and mules died standing in their traces. Her husband, Eli Bell, had been a teamster out of Fort Hays, a steady man, a gentleman, a man whose laugh always arrived before he did. Then a fever took him at a winter camp near the Purgatoire River, fast enough that the preacher was still 40 miles away when they lowered him into frozen ground. The camp boss gave Nora $5, a sack of meal, and advice to go east. She did not go east. There was no east left for her. There was only a cook fire, a sick child, and 48 hungry men who still needed breakfast before daylight. So Nora cooked. She learned to keep starter alive against her ribs on nights so cold the water bucket froze under the table. She learned how to feed men who had been swinging axes since dark. She learned that a tough shoulder of beef could be made tender with time, vinegar, and patience. She learned that biscuits baked in Dutch ovens needed coals above and below, and that too much flame on a lid would blacken a whole morning's hope. She learned how to make coffee strong enough to pull speech out of half-frozen men. And she learned the hardest lesson first. A woman with no protector could not afford to be merely useful. She had to be necessary. That was why she had answered Silas Ward's notice. The storekeeper's wife in Mesa Crossing had placed it in a matrimonial paper for him, though the words were practical enough to bruise. "Widowed rancher seeks capable woman. Housekeeping. Cooking, steady roof, hard country, no romance promised. Nora had answered in a square hand on a page torn from Lottie's copybook. She wrote that she was a widow. She wrote that she had one child. She wrote that she was no beauty and had no time for pretending otherwise. She wrote that she could feed a crew in weather. The reply came with rail fare and 4 stiff lines. Come if you choose. That was all. Not bring the child, not leave her, not one word to reveal whether Silas Ward was kind or careless. Now she knew he was wounded, and careless in the way wounded men sometimes become when they mistake their own pain for the only pain in the room. On Saturday, the ranch watched Nora as if she were a lamp burning low. The younger hands made bets by the corral on whether she would last 2 days or 3. Lottie heard one of them say, "The child will be crying for town before Sunday supper." She did not cry. She carried tin cups from the shelf to the table. She folded dish towels too large for her arms. She sat beside the one-eyed dog and whispered stories into its good ear. Silas saw little of it, or made himself see little. He came in for meals, ate, and left. The house had been quiet since Miriam died, and he had come to trust that quiet because it asked nothing of him. Now there was bread on the back of the stove, a child's shoes beside the door, and a woman moving through the rooms as if disorder were not a tragedy, only a job. It unsettled him, so he called it inconvenience. That night, Lottie carried coffee to him where he sat alone outside the dog trot, watching the wind drag dust across the moon. She set the cup on the step beside his boot. "Mama says it will be cold before morning," she said. Then she went back inside. Silas did not touch the cup, not for a long while. He sat there and looked at the steam disappearing into the dark, and hated the small ache it opened in him. The cold came before dawn. A blue norther rolled down from the mountains and struck the ranch before breakfast. The sky dropped low. The creek grass flattened. Dust turned to needles, then to sleet so fine it hissed against the windows. By noon, a rider came in with ice in his mustache and bad news in his mouth. The main outfit was 2 days out on the gather. 18 men, near 1,200 head. They were pushing for the home pasture ahead of the storm. And if the cattle held, the men would ride in around midday Sunday with empty bellies, dead hands, and weather in their bones. Silas had been counting on a cook from Red Cannon, a man named Leary, who had fed trail crews from Dodge to Santa Fe. Leary sent word by the same rider. He had taken wages with a larger outfit and was not coming. That would have been bad enough. Then the kitchen stove betrayed them. Near sundown, when Nora laid a new fire, smoke rolled out around the stovepipe and filled the room in a choking gray sheet. Silas and Amos pulled the pipe loose and found the upper joint cracked where old rust had eaten through the tin. It could heat a room. It could not carry a night's worth of cooking, not safely, not for 18 men. Judd stood in the kitchen doorway with the storm behind him and the pleasure of disaster on his face. "Well," he said, "there goes Sunday dinner." Nora looked at the cracked pipe, then out toward the wagon shed. "What happened to Haskell's chuck wagon?" she asked. Silas blinked. "Under the shed. Hasn't moved since he took sick. Does it still have its firebox?" "Yes." "Dutch oven?" "Some." "Coffee boiler?" "Yes." Nora wiped soot from her cheek with the back of one wrist. "Then Sunday dinner has not gone anywhere." Silas stared at her. The room was full of smoke, cold, men's doubt, and the sound of the storm pushing its shoulder against the house. He said the question he did not want to ask. "Can you feed 18 riders from that wagon in this weather?" Nora did not smile. She did not boast. She did not make herself small. She only picked up the blue crock and held it against her body. "How many pounds of beef are hanging?" she asked. "How much flour? How much coffee? And who among your men can split wood without needing applause?" Amos Pike laughed once, a dry, surprised sound. Silas did not laugh, but for the first time since she had stepped into his yard, he answered her as if she were not an accident. "Half a side of beef in the smokehouse," he said. 2 sacks flour, beans, dried peaches, molasses, salt pork, coffee enough if nobody gets proud. Then I need that wagon cleaned, I need wood, I need water, I need 2 lanterns, a shovel, and no man in my way unless he is carrying something useful. Judd's grin thinned. Silas turned toward him. "You heard her." Judd looked at the boss, then at the widow. Then he went for the wagon shed without another word. Nora did not sleep that night. She moved the way she had moved in camps where morning came whether a person was ready or not. First, she fed the sourdough. The starter in the blue crock rose under its cloth, sharp and alive, carrying the smell of every fire she had kept between one hard place and the next. She stirred flour and warm water into it and set it near the heat. "Come on, old girl," she whispered. Lottie, wrapped in a quilt on a chair, watched her through heavy eyes. "Is she alive?" the child asked. "She has to be," Nora said. "So do we." The chuck wagon had gone stiff with disuse. Haskell's pans were rusted at the edges. The coffee boiler held mouse straw. A layer of dust lay over the flour bins and the folded canvas as if the old cook had meant to come back and simply forgotten how to rise from the grave. Nora cleaned what she needed. She set Amos to scraping the coffee boiler with sand. She had Judd carry water until his shoulders lost some of their pride. She sent Silas for the beef. By lantern light under the shed, with sleet rattling against the roof, she built a cooking place out of what the ranch had left behind. She cut beef into 2 kinds of hope. The lean meat went into a kettle with onion, salt pork, coffee, and child to make a thick trail stew that could wake a frozen man from the inside out. The tougher pieces she laid in a covered pan with vinegar and molasses to cook low until noon. She soaked beans in the big pot. She rolled biscuit dough on a board dusted white as winter. She stewed dried peaches with sugar and a strip of lemon peel she found, wrapped in paper at the back of the pantry. Gone hard but not useless. The storm grew teeth after midnight. A canvas line tore loose from the wagon and snapped in the dark. The fire tried twice to gut her. Lottie woke crying once, not loud, but with that thin, frightened sound children make when they remember too much in their sleep. Nora left the dough, crossed the shed, and held her until the shaking passed. Silas saw it from the doorway. He had come out carrying an armload of wood and stopped where the lantern threw the woman and child into one small ring of gold. He remembered Miriam in a fever bed. He remembered standing useless beside it. He remembered telling himself that wanting another living soul under his roof would be a kind of betrayal. But grief does not become holy just because a man refuses to heal. Sometimes it only becomes selfish. He set the wood down quietly and went back into the storm. By 4 in the morning, Nora had biscuit dough rising in covered pans and stew simmering thick enough to hold a spoon upright. By 6, she was baking in Dutch ovens, coals under the bellies and coals heaped on the lids. By 8, her hands were red, her eyes burned from smoke, and her hair had come loose under her scarf. By 10, there were 5 dozen biscuits wrapped in flour sacking, 2 kettles of stew, a pan of slow beef, beans with pork, peach cobbler, and coffee ready to boil black. At 11, the sleet turned to cutting snow. At noon, the riders came in. They came bent over their saddle horns, hats frozen hard, coats white at the shoulders. The cattle had made the home pasture, but just barely. Horses staggered in with manes blown sideways. Men swung down like old hinges, stiff and near dumb from the cold. They expected a cold kitchen. Maybe old beans, maybe nothing. Then the smell reached them. Coffee first, then beef, then hot bread. A young hand named Tully stopped in the yard and lifted his head as though he had heard his mother call from another life. "What is that?" he said. No one answered, because hope is a thing men distrust until it is set in front of them on a plate. They came to the wagon shed, one by one. Judd first, though he had earned that right in his own mind and nowhere else. He stopped under the lintel. Behind him, 18 men crowded shoulder to shoulder in the storm. There was Nora Bell beside the chuck wagon, flour on her sleeves, soot on one cheek, hair pinned badly, eyes steady. There was Lottie standing on an overturned crate with a stack of tin plates held to her chest. There were Dutch ovens bedded in coals, a coffee boiler steaming, biscuits wrapped warm, stew dark with beef and chile. Beans, peach cobbler, and heat, real heat, the kind that reaches a man before words do. Nora looked at them and said, "Get in under the roof. Hang your coats where they'll drip away from the fire. Plates are here. Coffee is there. If your hands are too cold to hold a cup, say so before you drop it." No man moved. Then Amos Pike took off his hat, not because he was indoors. They were in a wagon shed with snow blowing through the cracks. He took it off because he understood what had been done. The others followed him. 18 cattlemen, bareheaded in a freezing shed, standing before a woman they had not thought would last the weekend. Then they ate. The first minutes were almost silent. Forks scraped, coffee poured, a horse stamped outside. One man coughed into his sleeve and went right on eating. Tully broke open a biscuit and steam rose from it in a white ribbon. He stared at the inside as if he had found a letter. Tom Garrett, who had not praised a meal since the Garfield administration, took one bite of stew, closed his eyes and said, "Lord above." Judd said nothing. He ate one plate, then another. Then held his tin out without looking at Nora. She filled it. That was the whole argument. Every word he had spent against her on Friday sat between them and starved to death while he ate what she had made. When the stew was nearly gone, Nora cut the peach cobbler. The syrup ran gold into the tin cups. The crust had browned in patches where the coals had worked hot, and the fruit beneath it steamed with molasses. Men who had ridden 2 nights in a norther ate cobbler in a wagon shed and did not joke about it. Not one, because there are meals that fill a belly, and there are meals that tell a man he has not been forgotten by the living world. This was the second kind. Silas stood outside the shed door in the storm shadow and watched. He watched his men, hard men, proud men, men who would rather bleed than ask a tender question. He watched them lower their voices around Nora Bell's fire. He watched Lottie carry coffee to a rider whose fingers shook too badly to button his coat. He watched Judd Raines step backward when Nora reached for another kettle, making room without being told. And he felt something inside himself give way. Not break, not yet, but loosen, like a gate frozen shut finally hearing the sun. Then Amos Pike set his plate down and looked straight at Nora. "I knew that bread," he said. The shed quieted. Nora's hand stilled on the ladle. Amos leaned forward, his weathered face sharpened by memory. "I've been chewing on it since Friday night. Purgatoire Thai Camp, winter of '82. I hauled mule chains up there for a contractor out of Trinidad. There was a widow cooking after fever took half the camp. Men rode 3 miles out of their way for that bread when they could get it." He pointed one crooked finger toward the blue crock on the wagon shelf. "That was you. Nora did not answer at once. For a moment she looked less steady than she had all night. Yes, she said. Her voice was low. My husband died there. Amos nodded, and the nod had the weight of a man taking off his hat at a grave. I remember. I remember men who had not said thank you to God in 10 years saying thank you to you. He turned his eyes across the shed, stopping on Judd. Cottonwood Bend has been handed better luck than it deserves. Judd stared into his empty plate. This time when he spoke, there was no grin in it. Yes, he said, it has. The storm lasted 2 more days. Nora fed them through all of it. Breakfast before gray light. Dinner at noon. Supper when the wind went black around the house. She did not do it sweetly. She did it correctly. Men learned fast that help was welcome and hovering was not. They brought wood. They carried water. They scraped plates into the slop pan. They stopped using language at her fire that would make Lottie turn her head. On the second morning, Judd came from the well with the yoke across his own shoulders and set 2 full buckets by the stove. He removed his hat. Mrs. Bell, he said, and the words cost him enough that every man in the room pretended not to listen. I spoke low when you came. I had no call to do it. Nora looked at him, then took a covered plate from the back of the stove. She had set it aside before he came in. Beef, beans, 2 biscuits, and the last good corner of cobbler. You rode 30 hours in weather, she said. Eat while it's hot, Mr. Raines. Then bring me kindling. Judd accepted the plate in both hands. No one laughed, not even after he left. By Monday, the freight wagon returned from Mesa Crossing. It stopped in the yard long enough for the driver to warm his hands and ask whether Mrs. Bell wanted her place back on the bench. Silas stood on the porch. Nora stood in the kitchen doorway with a towel over one shoulder. Lottie was inside, teaching the old dog to hold a biscuit on its nose. No one answered the driver for a long second. Then Nora said no. That was all. No speech, no triumph. Just one small word that shut the road behind her. The driver looked to Silas. Silas looked to Nora, and the wagon left empty. A week later, a professional cook did arrive. A red-bearded fellow named Hanratty, with knives in a roll and a recommendation from 3 outfits. He came to the ranch ready to bargain high because he had heard Cottonwood Bend was desperate. Nora fed him dinner out of courtesy. He ate 2 plates in silence, drank coffee, and looked at the bread. Then he found Silas by the barn. I can cook for you, Hanratty said, but I cannot beat what is already in that house. Silas said nothing. Hanratty grinned. Any man who lets that woman go needs a keeper more than a cook. He rode south before dusk. Silas watched him leave and thought of Monday's wagon. He thought of how close he had come to sending Nora and Lottie back into a world that had already taken more from them than he had bothered to imagine. The shame of it did not strike all at once. It settled, slow and heavy, like snow on a roof. The fall work resumed when the weather broke. The herd had to be cut, branded, driven, counted, loaded, and sold. It was hard country work, and no kitchen wall could hold Nora inside it. She took Haskell's chuck wagon onto the range and made it hers. She tied the blue crock in a padded box beneath the seat. She hung coffee from the side hook. She taught Lottie to count plates by 2s and stay clear of hooves. At noon, her wagon came over the rise with the canvas snapped tight and smoke lifting from the stovepipe, and the men turned toward it the way plants turn toward water. She fed them beef stew, corn dodgers, beans with onions, sourdough cakes fried in grease when the cold went wet, coffee thick enough to stand a horseshoe in. She learned which men needed more salt, which needed a quiet word, and which were better healed by being ordered sharply to sit down and eat. The men learned her too. They learned not to call her girl. They learned not to touch the blue crock. They learned that Lottie could be bribed with ribbon but not with bad manners. Tully brought the child a string of red beads from Mesa Crossing and turned the color of boiled ham when she thanked him. Amos mended the wagon brake without being asked. Even Judd, who had spent years making his roughness into a kind of uniform, began leaving dry split wood where Nora would find it before dawn. Silas watched all this from horseback and from doorways and from the far side of fires. He watched the ranch alter itself around a woman it had nearly rejected. And he understood with a humility that came late and hurt more because of it, that Nora had not softened Cottonwood Bend, she had strengthened it. At the railhead in Pueblo Flats, the truth became public. The Ward cattle had made weight despite the storm. The men were tired but not worn hollow. Other crews came in ragged, cursing bad coffee and worse luck. Cottonwood Bend rolled in with its riders fed, its horses tended, and its wagon smelling of bread. A trail boss named McClure, running a big herd north, ate at Nora's fire because Amos had bragged too loudly and Nora had enough beans to punish him for it. McClure ate once, then again. The next morning, he offered Nora $50 a month in gold to cook his outfit clear to Ogallala and back. That was more than some men made risking their necks in saddle leather. The whole fire heard it. So did Silas, though he pretended to be tightening a cinch. Nora did not look at him. She looked at McClure. "That is good pay," she said. "It is, and a long road." "Yes, Mom." She stirred the coffee once. "I have had enough long road." McClure's eyes moved from her to Silas, then back again. He smiled but kindly enough. "Then Ward better know what he has." Nora's face did not change. "He is learning." The men around the fire found sudden reasons to cough, adjust saddles, and look elsewhere. Silas stood with the strap in his hand and felt those words enter him clean. He is learning, not he knows, not he deserves, learning. It was more mercy than he had earned and less than he wanted. Lottie reached him before Nora did. Children often do. She had a way of appearing beside him with some small object that needed fixing. A loose button, a splintered spoon, the dog's collar, a strip of harness leather she insisted was important. At first Silas answered stiffly, as if kindness had to be rationed. Then one cold evening after the shipping money was counted, and the herd pens had gone quiet, he found her asleep in the wagon bed beneath a canvas tarp. The dog was beside her. The air had turned sharp enough to bite. Nora was still at the fire, washing kettles by lantern light. Silas stood over the sleeping child a long time. Then he took off his coat and laid it over her, and the dog, tucking the edges around small shoulders. Lottie opened her eyes halfway. "Thank you, Mr. Ward," she whispered. He could have stepped away. Instead, he said, "Silas is fine." She blinked. "Mama says children should not call grown men by given names unless asked." "I am asking." She considered that. "All right," she said. "Thank you, Silas." Then she fell asleep again. Silas walked back into the cold without his coat and did not feel it for nearly a minute. Something in him had moved one stone in the wall, then another. The night the fall work ended, the first snow came down without wind. No violence in it, no warning. Just white falling over the yard, soft as flour sifted from a high hand. The men had been paid. The horses were turned out. The chuck wagon stood clean beneath the shed, its iron dark and cooled. Nora was in the kitchen setting bread for morning. She had washed the soot from her hands, but flour still whitened the edges of her fingers. Lottie slept in the small room off the kitchen, with the dog across the threshold like a ruined old guardian. Silas stopped in the doorway where he had stood the first day she came. He remembered the carpetbag in the dust, the blue crock, Judd's laugh, his own silence. He had been wrong in all the quiet ways a man can be wrong while still calling himself decent. "Nora," he said. She looked up from the dough. His voice had changed enough that she did not go on kneading. "I wrote for help," he said. "That is the truth of it. I wrote for a woman to cook and keep my house because I was tired and angry and too proud to admit I was lonely." The lamp hissed softly. "I did not make room in my mind for your child. I did not make room for your grief. I did not make room for anything except what I needed. And you came anyway." Nora's hand stayed still in the bowl. Silas swallowed. "I will not dress that up. It was small of me." The snow tapped at the window. He stepped into the kitchen. "I am asking you now for something that was not in any notice. Not because you fed my men. Not because the house is warm. Not because Cottonwood Bend would be poorer without your work, though God knows it would be." He took off his hat. "I am asking because I would be poorer without you. And because Lottie has made a place in this house that feels as if it was waiting for her before either one of us knew it. I cannot promise I am easy. I cannot promise I will never go quiet, but I can promise I will spend whatever years I have left learning how not to make grief the only thing I keep faithful." Nora looked at him for a long time. She had come west because the world behind her had closed like a fist. She had carried a child, a Crock, and a name that belonged to a dead man she still loved. She had been measured and found wanting by men who knew nothing of what she had survived. And now the man in front of her was not offering rescue. That mattered. Rescue could be taken back. He was offering witness. He was saying he had seen her. "Ellie was a good man," she said. "I know." "No," Nora said gently. "You do not, but you know enough not to ask me to pretend otherwise." Silas lowered his eyes. "I would not. My heart is not a clean room, Silas. It has old things in it. Then we will not throw them out." That was the answer that reached her. Not the asking, not the apology. That. Nora wiped her hands down her apron. "I came here because I needed a roof," she said. "I stayed because the work was mine. If I stay now, it will not be for wages. It will not be because I have nowhere else to go. I know. It will be because I am wanted here." Silas's voice was rough. "You are." Nora crossed the kitchen floor and set her flower-white hands in his. Outside, snow gathered on the porch rail, the wagon shed, the corral posts, the long road back toward town. Inside, the blue crock rested on the shelf near the stove, alive and rising. They married 3 weeks before Christmas in the little church at Mesa Crossing. Amos Pike stood as witness in a collar so tight he looked personally betrayed by civilization. Judd Raines sat in the second pew, with his hat pressed against his chest and his boots polished badly. Lottie wore a green wool dress Nora had stitched by lamplight, and Silas gave her a ribbon comb for her hair, because he had learned that fathers sometimes begin with very small things. At the wedding supper, half the town discovered what Cottonwood Bend already knew. That the plain widow with the work-rue hands could turn a bare table into a place people lowered their voices around. By spring, Miriam's thimble still sat on the shelf, polished and respected. Her china cup was wrapped and put away for Lottie when she was older. Nora planted beans and onions beside the kitchen door, not over Miriam's garden, but next to it. She did not believe a home had to erase one love to make room for another. The ranch changed, not all at once. Nothing true changes all at once. It changed in the habits that last. Men washed their cups. Wood appeared before the box ran low. No one mocked a woman at Cottonwood Bend where Nora could hear it, and soon not where she could not. The blue crock became a thing of ranch superstition. New hands were told not to touch it unless they wanted Amos Pike to explain manners for the better part of an afternoon. Lottie grew tall enough to drive the wagon team at a walk. Silas learned to leave his silence at the door when it was the wrong kind, and to sit in the kitchen with coffee when it was the right kind. Years later, when northers came down hard and the creek froze in the shallows, travelers still watched for the lamp in the kitchen window, because they knew there would be bread rising near the stove, coffee hot, a place out of the wind, and a woman there who had once arrived with nothing the ranch thought it needed, except the one thing that could save it. Nora Bell Ward did not become worthy when the men took off their hats. She had been worthy when she stepped down from the wagon. She had been worthy when the world called her plain. She had been worthy when she buried her husband and kept the starter alive because her child still needed mourning. Cottonwood Bend did not make her into something valuable. It only learned, late and humbled, how to recognize the value already standing in its yard. And on the bitter nights when the wind rode low across the grass and rattled every pane in the house, that cracked blue crock sat warm beside the stove, breathing under its cloth, alive, like the home she had built around it.